Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. Setup Sunday. Let's take a look at some charts. Unfortunately, we do have to talk about some political stuff. I'll talk about that towards the end. But that's certainly going to be impactful, I think, depending on how that plays out. But first, let's take a look at BTC. Looking at the ETF flows, last week we mainly had outflows. We had a tiny inflow at the end of the week. So on a weekly basis, we were net negative slightly. Monthly basis, positive. Q1, much more positive than Q2. Q2 is probably barely positive or decently positive, right? We don't have a lot of inflows here, regardless of what's going on with the basis trade or anything else. Certainly not like Q1, where we were seeing billions and billions come in from wherever. Demand that wanted to always access BTC and didn't have it. People selling coins and accessing the ETFs, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. We had lots of demand. So cumulative going into Q2, we are just under 15 billion in inflows. My assumption here is if we do see bullish continuation, we will see flows break out in a big way. And I expect it to be somewhat momentum driven until wirehouses come online, until we have this passive TWAP bid or whatever we have when BTC ETFs get included into these models. But for now, we're sort of at the whim of momentum in the market. If we look at VLO data for the open interest stats in coin terms, we're actually down from the local highs here. The basis trade still sitting at 10%. So it's still somewhat attractive to participate in this, which would mean potentially, let's say someone's waiting for the quarterly rollover or something to happen. We may see a situation again in July where we get massive inflows on the first day of the month, and then price goes nowhere and people are asking what the hell, right? like that's possible, but we'll see. There's certainly enough in the basis trade here to likely still be attractive for people, but I'm guessing because of the political stuff and the uncertainty there, a lot of that may just be on hold. I don't know. It's all about what is the aggregated risk here versus this trade looks good. Options on the new products, also something to watch for in Q3 and Q4, as well as just new products around the ETFs, also something to watch for that we'll potentially see baskets of different products coming with what will probably be an ETH ETF as well. Looking at quarterly returns, Q2 uncharacteristically negative here. Depending on how you want to slice this, you can say, well, Q2 was negative, so Q3 might be positive. You could say, well, June was negative, so July should be positive, as has been the case based on seasonality going back to 2013. Okay, I'm not going to take a trade on that, but I'm going to keep it in mind. I'm not going to be mega short knowing this information, but I don't think this is enough for anybody to say, oh man, I'm going to get mega long based on June, July seasonality flip-flop, okay? For ETH, the first half of the year tends to be the bullish half of the year. I suspect the ETFs and the ETF approvals and launches are going to disrupt seasonality for ETH. In what way, I'm not sure. Again, we can look at like the monthly data here. ETH has had negative June and July months before. Over the past few years, it has flip-flopped where June has been positive or negative, and then July has been the opposite of June. I just don't think that's enough to say, yeah, let's take a trade on that. But it's worth keeping in mind. And especially with ETFs, I'm under the assumption that the ETH unlock will still be significant and that inflows will be minimal. Something that may disrupt that would be BTC breaking 72. If BTC breaks 72 in July, which I think that probability is slim, but not zero, but if it does, that will likely help push ETH higher. And the alternative to that is if ETH breaks its local high, does that pull BTC up? Does that bring momentum back across the board? We'll see. But I think at least for the first 2 weeks of the ETH ETFs, we will see ETH unlocks similar to GBTC for similar reasons. Does that mean I think ETH is going to zero? No. But if we have a breakdown in price, the ETH unlocks are not going to help, obviously. So the net of possibilities and probabilities is extremely wide right now. We are pretty sure ETH ETFs are going to get approved. We don't know if Biden's going to run for re-election, right? Like this could go in lots and lots of different ways. So my whole deal here is until we have a better clue as to what's going on, and maybe politically, probably dial back the leverage, probably dial back the sizing and length, probably dial back near-term expectations for anything until we have some conclusions on these open questions that are looming. Liquidity has also pulled back both in the US and globally. In the US, this is potentially related to window dressing end of quarter stuff. The RRP increased by quite a bit. That will bring liquidity down, and this will act as a headwind in the near term until liquidity perks back up, right? And this is a good time to point out, are you trading for this week right now, or are you trading for Q4? Are you trading for post-election? Are you trading for 2025? Are you trading under the assumption that XYZ altcoin is going to get some liquidity injection, or XYZ altcoin is going to be the next ETF application, whether that's Solana, Doge, Link, I don't know, right? Are we trading as though Trump has it? Is that how we're trading? You could trade like that. You could say, you know what, nothing matters because regulations are going to go down. The SEC is going to get gutted. The Fed's going to get replaced. And Trump's good for my bags, right? You could trade like that today, and you could be right. I just think that possibility, that outcome, is still pretty vast, potentially, depending on, I'll talk about the political stuff at the end, but depending on who the Dems run, right? But in the near term, liquidity not helping our cause here on prices moving up. We still have someone sitting on the cash side of the market on one exchange versus BFX. We still have a premium on BFX versus Coinbase. Not something we typically see when we're bullish. This may change Monday. I don't know, right? All of this sort of depends on the ETFs and what the ETFs do. We don't have enough momentum in the market for crypto to move on its own right now. We're still very much range bound. So we are very dependent on TradFi money to make the deciding factor here. We also have someone on BFX who's very long and getting longer, has been doing so on the way down. We know we have GOX coming. We know we have Germany potentially selling more. We know we have the US potentially selling more. We've got miners potentially selling more, right? All that may be priced in. I don't know. Maybe we don't have enough buyers to overcome that, right? I have no idea. Again, the net of possibilities here is vast. We are a pluripotent stem cell. We could be bearish. We could be bullish. We could be neutral. We could be Cancer. We could be a bunch of different stuff, right? I don't think now is the time to leverage up yet in a big way, because I think the real trades are coming up. I think you're better off here doing nothing. I think that's what the market's telling you, certainly telling me, by just chopping up in this range. Before I talk about some more BTC charts, let me mention today's video sponsor, Kraken Pro. Kraken Pro is a complete overhaul of the Kraken trading experience with one-stop shop for advanced and professional traders. Kraken Pro enables efficient trading execution across multiple markets with a UI that allows for unique optimization tailored to your trading style. You can check out Kraken Pro with the link in the description of this video. Non-investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Ventures, Inc., PVI, DBA, Kraken. Looking at Kraken, I always like to look at volumes for the day. BTC on top is a good thing for risk, let's say. Sol underneath Tether, ETH, about half of Sol's volume. And then we've got meme coins and then some AI stuff, and mostly everything else falls off a cliff. So if you're trading down the market cap table, I wouldn't be trading for this week, this month, this quarter. I'd really be thinking about positioning for 2024 and 2025 or Q4 2024. If you are gung-ho about alts, I wouldn't expect a miracle anytime super soon. For the most part, the focus is still, what is BTC going to do? Is it going to break out? Is it going to break highs or not? What is the Fed going to do? What does the election look like? What do elections globally look like? What do regulations globally look like? All these unknowns, to me, mean that alts are a tougher play here. It doesn't mean they can't do well. It just means they're a tougher play here, definitely. Looking at the BTC cloud, the single most important thing to me from a technical perspective, we're still in the cloud. We have a bearish cloud, bearish TK cross. Collectively, this is a neutral picture. Unsurprisingly, if we break down, we will be bearish. Okay, but that sort of solidifies the bearish path. It's always possible that we revisit the bottom of the cloud again, like we did in 2023 a couple times, and bounce back. It's possible that the low is in. It's possible that the selling's over, right? Again, the probabilities and possibilities here are very, very wide. If we're above the cloud with a bullish TK cross, then it's go time. We are not there. If we're below the cloud with a bearish TK cross and bearish cloud, it's go time. We're not there. So there's really no trade here for me on the daily picture, and there probably won't be for the month of July. I haven't taken a leveraged trade other than BITU in quite some time. There just really hasn't been much to do on a longer time frame that isn't going to get you chopped up. So what are we looking for here? Anything above 65 would be good news for the bulls. Anything below 56 would be great news for the bears. And that's about as far as you can go here. There's really nothing else on trend, on cloud, on the daily that tells you much of anything. We still lean bearish on lower time frames. This is the 8 hour, trying to bounce, trying to get out of this parabolic puke. We're finally putting up a fight. Someone's finally hitting the green button instead of the red button. This potential bear flag breakdown didn't happen yet. Until we're open on Monday, US hours, I'm still not sure. Okay, like we're up, but we've been up several times and we've just sold off. So the true test isn't going to be Sunday night futures open. It's going to be Monday on noon EST. What do we look like? Okay, but this looks great so far. We didn't fall off a cliff over the weekend, right? This is the 4 hour. Still in this bearish pitchfork, trying to get above the midline, which is a good sign. We're getting towards the bullish half of the bearish pitchfork. Still got a ways to go. 65, we would clear this later on in the week. July 4th this week, so Thursday, markets are closed on the Tradfi side. We still have most of the real allocators getting back after July 4th is my guess. So I'm not expecting much this week. But if we can move on our own volition in one direction or the other, that'll certainly help the case for some sort of bottom. Alternatively, we still have the M double top. That is still there. We are still very far above the previous rate of change. So to say this is impossible is incorrect. Of course, it's possible if we break down for whatever reason. I like sub 50. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, look, this is what the TA is showing right now, today, Sunday. So things can happen where this gets avoided or averted or invalidated. We're reclaiming the pivot, which is good news. We could bounce at 52.5. We could not go all the way back to the 200-week moving average. The probability of us breaking down completely from here is probably 10 to 15%. I don't think it's very high, but I don't think it's zero. So you can't just ignore that and put your head in the sand. Looking at some other trend metrics, this is alligator fractal on the weekly. Weekly candle, by the way, looks pretty good. Looks like a dragonfly. The true test for this weekly candle is next weekly's candle. As you can see on the last candle that was similar to this, we actually failed that bullish reversal with a bearish breakdown on the next week. So what do we want to see? We want to see something similar to July 2023, where we get candlesticks even like the SVB candlestick, some sort of no doubter, nothing but net, bullish candle, bullish engulfing, Maru Bozu, however you say that, where we clear the body entirely of this week's candle. So we're not quite there yet. Stop loss on the weekly based on alligator fractal, somewhere around 58 down there. So this certainly doesn't say breakout. It certainly doesn't say anything. You know, this is neutral, boring. We're at the midpoint. There's really nothing there. Looking at the daily, we're definitely bearish. We're crushing bullish fractals over and over. The next bullish fractal is at 60. So if we crush that with a bearish trend, that probably means bearish continuation, just as bullish continuation was expected when we crushed this resistance fractal on the way up. So these are just things to watch for. This isn't, I think we're going here or there. It's just, we're not out of the woods yet, certainly. Bollinger Bands stopped expanding to the downside. Great. We're still below the midpoint on the 20-day. Again, not really much of anything. Not helping us out one direction or another. A pretty wonky breakdown of the 20-week, something we don't typically see in a bull trend. Last time we saw that was basically the bottom, pre-ETFs. Not to suggest this will be a bottom. It's just we don't break the 20-week in a bull trend. So you could say, well, this is special circumstances because of XYZ sellers and the end of the quarter. Okay. But, you know, look, this doesn't look great here. We need to bounce this week. We cannot break lows. If we break lows 56 or lower, I certainly think we're going to the mid 40s. It's that simple. So the bulls need to continue to put up a fight. Another way to be pretty certain of that is looking at the volume profile. We are still in the safety of the harbor that is this volume profile. If the tide goes out, we're going to 52. That is the next stop on the volume profile. Below that, it's basically resetting back to the ETF launch, which is what most bears would want, I believe. So it is imperative that we do not break lows. I don't think anybody doesn't think that. It's just, look, if we break lows, I get very bearish very quickly, because all the TA goes from, hey, this is pretty neutral, to this is pretty bearish in the near term. The good news is long-term power law corridor, we're still plenty fine. I don't know what this actual resistance point would be. Probably 42, if I had to guess. Post-halving, it usually takes us a while to get out of the gate and to get above this resistance point in the power law corridor. Right now, I think that's at like 82 or something, potentially. We're starting to see my potential target for this cycle, which is 333K by July 2025. I will take anything in the upper 10% of this. And that is when I will be on YouTube every day telling people, with the first chart being this chart, hey, we are at the upper bands of the power law corridor. I'd be pretty careful up here, right? So that is the imaginary profit calculator talking, but that is the level where I will be selling. I know it right now. So everybody has a plan. I hope. That's my plan. Here's the 2-year moving average multiplier. We're still well within this. Support, again, much lower. It's basically the 200-week moving average down there. And this will continue to move up, much like it did in 2017 and in 2020. So we're nowhere near the sell zone on that one. So that's BTC. Whole lot of nothing at the end of the day until we're about out of this range. ETH, SOL, very much the same, right? Like maybe this is a falling wedge. Maybe we're bullish on ETF approvals. Maybe we're bearish on the launch. I don't know, right? But if we're just looking at TA, if we're above 4K, we're probably going to 5.5. If we're below 3,000, we're probably going sub 2,800, right? That's about as far as I could go. This is just range chop. Is this some sort of pattern? Sure. Inverted head and shoulders. I don't know, right? Take your pick. There's about 15 things you could draw here. It's going to be easier to respond to what happens with the ETFs, in my opinion, than putting on some massive trade here with some expectation. The cloud is basically resetting completely and going from bullish to neutral. Despite the ETFs being what I would call a surprise for ETH, there hasn't been continuation. That has been nothing but selling, and that has not been independent of BTC. ETH has not gone the other way, for example, right? So if you get BTC right, you're going to get ETH right, most likely. If we pop on a pitchfork for ETH, good news is we're on the midpoint of the pitchfork since 2022. If we take some crazy anchors here all the way to the low of 2022. So upside is anything in the 4s and the 5s in the near term, and downside in the near term. Not much lower than 2,800, but there's a lot of chop that could happen here between ETF approvals and the launch. I don't think ETH being bearish because of an unlock on ETH is quite enough to push us on BTC in the 40s, but there's going to be some momentum pile on for sure if it's turbo bearish. Looking at Solana, it is nothing. Trend has reset completely for the first time since Q4 2023, which is great from a trend trader's perspective because the next move up to the top side is going to be pretty highly convicted long. You could say low time frames, there's an inverted head and shoulders here. You can kind of see it. But on the daily, everything is reset. So momentum has continued to chop around. Nothing much has really happened since the March high. 200 is a big psychological level. 150 is a big psychological level. And if you're positioning for 2025, right, this TA right now doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter if we're turbo choppy, but you just have to have a plan. Make sure you have a plan. I don't see anything on the meme coins. Just taking a quick look. Doge, SHIB, these could be falling wedges of some sort. WIF recovering, basically hit its bearish breakdown target with a wick. Bonk looks like a mess. Floki looks like a mess. Pepe, head and shoulders potentially. So on the meme coin side, I don't see a trade here for me in particular. But let's say you're bullish ETH ETFs and Pepe's gonna moon. Okay, right? Like have something behind the trade other than I just think we're gonna go up, right? As long as you have a plan, what do I care? Doesn't matter to me. You could say, well, SHIB is down 50% since the highs or something, and now's the time. Okay, Okay, right? You can always take a trade just like you can on BTC. You can take a trade along to the long side with a stop loss at any lower low. That's always an option. Not necessarily for me, but it is an option. Looking at the calendar, again, July 4th in the US, Thursday, so nothing of note, no trading on that day in Legacyville. Friday is a pretty important day for unemployment. And then next Thursday is going to be CPI. So between unemployment, CPI, and potentially what's going on with Biden, we're in for some interesting, volatile times. You can always size up and leverage up if you think they're going to run Biden no matter what. Biden's going to lose. Trump's going to win. Trump hates crypto less than Biden, right? You can go down this game theory rabbit hole. If you think Trump's winning no matter what, right? Take the trade. What does the TA matter? I think depending on who the Dems pick, I think the real options are Newsom, Buttigieg, or Whitmer. I think everyone else loses to Trump pretty handedly. So it depends what they do. If they go with Harris, I think it's also over. It's pretty clear Trump is going to win in the polls, or has popped up in the polls pretty considerably, I guess is a better way to put it. So the next best trade for the year might be, what is the Trump trade? Is the Trump trade pro-crypto, anti-globalization, anti-trade? I don't know, right? Anti-tech. I think pro-crypto is the clearest trade to take, but it's probably not the only trade to take. We also have political upheaval, chaos in in France, Macron taking a beating, potentially previewing things to come here in the US with things moving right. Looking at the DXY, I would think if Trump wants to devalue the dollar that we would be starting to price that in. Maybe we are, I don't know. Trump has said he wants to devalue the dollar. We're still very much in a range here. If this breaks down, BTC goes up. If this breaks up, BTC goes down. It's that simple. Above 107, and we're probably below 56 on BTC, below 104, and we're probably above 72 on BTC. That's about as far as I can take it. There's really not much else to say. You can say there's some sort of pattern here. That's probably a bottom. You could say the cloud is bullish. All that's fine. But we do have a pretty important election coming up. And if you want to position for that, maybe you're taking a trade on based on that, right? UJ continues to slowly inch higher. The good news is, because we're inversely correlated to this on BTC land, the good news is this is a pretty convincing parabola. The bad news is, I don't know what actually stops this from continuing unless the Fed steps in with swap lines or more interventions, or the dollar just devalues itself based on expectations. I don't know, right? But this is getting to a point where we probably start to see a big move one way or the other, depending on what's going on. Maybe it explodes higher to a point where we start to see something happen. Maybe that's the best case. This should continue to go up as long as the rate differential is what it is for these two countries. So let's say we see unemployment rising, we see CPI down, which we should. I don't know about unemployment to a point where it matters, but all of this is sort of talking to each other as far as the macro data, presidential election, and dollar strength. Now you would think if Trump is being priced in, ES would be very happy with that. This is S&P futures, basically flat. I think what happened was Trump got priced in, and then people started to realize, oh wait, Biden did so poorly that they'll replace him, and then Trump will have a harder time beating anyone else. That's my assumption. The Democrats are dumb enough to run somebody who will lose to Trump anyway, outside of Biden, if they do swap him out. But until we know for certain what's going to happen there, directionality may be challenged on the S&P, on the Qs. This is the NQ futures, just sort of flat. It's Sunday. It's the first week of July. Again, all this stuff applies to legacy where the real allocators aren't really here. So it depends what happens throughout the month, obviously, with economic data and the Fed. As far as a few trade ideas, Tesla has curled up quite a bit through the daily cloud, starting to look more and more bullish. The inverted head and shoulders looks very real. Again, is the Trump trade Tesla? I don't know, right? Is the Trump trade energy? Is the Trump trade some other industry? You can let me know in the comments that would benefit from a Trump presidency versus a Biden presidency. Nevertheless, technicals on Tesla look great. Technicals on Uber are pre-breakout. So I really like this trade. Above the cloud, doesn't have a bullish TK cross just yet. Cloud is obviously bearish, but I really like how this broke down, formed a bottom over multiple months, and is ready to go. So these trades are really like, you have a clear entry, a clear exit down here. You have a stop loss, exit up here, stop loss down here. And this looks ready to go, whereas a lot of crypto is just, all over the place, wishy-washy. SMCI is another one. Low time frames, head and shoulders all the way. Cloud is telling you it's neutral. Everything's resetting here. Something to watch. Maybe this is up too much. Maybe the semis trade is over. Maybe this needs to break down first. I don't know. But if this starts to break up, I think that's a trade that I'll be taking. It already tried to and failed once. And it's probably foolish to try again. But if it's above the cloud a second time, I think it's a worthwhile trade. So a lot of stuff going on that maybe matters in the near term won't matter by November, won't matter by January. Hopefully the election results are clear. Hopefully we do not have a contested election. Hopefully we do not have a constitutional crisis. Markets do not like chaos. Markets like certainty. Markets do not like unknowns. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.